Good morning, everyone. Welcome to our virtual tabling. And so today we're going to talk about meal prep or meal preparing. Meal prepping is a good way to sort of instill some healthy behaviors, especially when it comes to nutrition. So let's get started. So what exactly is meal prepping? Basically, it's taking a block of time during your day to prepare large amounts of meals or ingredients. There's three kind of main styles to meal prepping: batch cooking, which is you create kind of exactly what it sounds. You create a big batch of, let's say a pot of soup, and you can eat that over the course of a few days. There's also packing individual meals. So you might have, your main protein source and then a couple of sides. You make, a relatively big batch of that again, and then you divide that out into individual meals for you to take, whether it's to work or even just to have, after work or, for dinner or something like that, or breakfast. And then a third kind of main style is preparing ingredients. So this would just be, maybe you don't want to cook everything right away, but instead you'll prepare, you'll chop up a bunch of onions and a bunch of vegetables so that once you're ready to cook all of them, you have all of that preparation done. Because when cooking, a lot of the time comes from preparing the ingredients. If you do decide that preparing ingredients is a good way for you to start meal prepping, I do suggest that you use all the prepared ingredients within like a day or two, because once you start to cut into, fresh foods and fresh vegetables, they start to go bad quicker. So you want to make sure that you use them up pretty quickly. So why exactly should you meal prep? So there's a couple different reasons. So for one, it can make it easier to eat healthy. If you prepare all your meals in advance, you're more likely to just grab one of those meals, and then, you don't have to necessarily worry about, going to like a fast food restaurant for lunch or for dinner. It can also save time on cooking. So if you just tough it out for, one or 2 days of the week and just cook, take all that time to cook, it can cut down on your cooking, especially if you choose recipes that are pretty simple. And a lot of meal prepping recipes are very simple. You just prepare a lot of your vegetables and roast them or saute them, for example, and then you have all your you have your meal ready. And it also can save money because you're buying your own food and your own ingredients. So, that's a couple of reasons, a couple of different benefits from meal prepping. So getting started. So first step, you want to define your SMART goals. So do you need to eat breakfast regularly? Are you trying to look for healthier lunches? Just trying to develop, why you want to start meal prepping. And the reason I kind of bring this up is because then you can start looking for, the recipes that work for you. So if you're trying to eat breakfast regularly, then maybe you'll meal prep your breakfast by, for example, maybe you'll come up with individual parfaits or overnight oats or something like that. You should also find a cooking time that works for you. A lot of people usually suggest, maybe like a Sunday afternoon and then one day in the middle of the week just to kind of break it up. But it's all dependent on your schedule. Whatever time works for you to start cooking, that's the time you should take. Also, getting proper containers for all your meal prepping. Glass is kind of the gold standard because you don't have any weird chemicals in glass. Glass is also easily reheatable. There's even some glass dishes that you can put it in the oven, and then you don't have to just store your food in them. You can actually cook your food in them. Glass can be a little bit expensive, so you can also opt for BPA-free plastic containers. It's important to note, though, with plastic containers, even though they might be free of, it might say BPA free on them, you don't necessarily want to reheat them, or you want to do that as little as possible. One, because it can, start to warp the plastic over time. But even if it's BPA free, which, we don't want that seeping into our foods, even though it's, it says it's BPA free, different chemicals from the plastic can still leach into your food. So it's best, if you want to store your food in plastic containers, it's totally fine, and then put it on a plate when you're ready to heat it up. But if you can, just try to avoid, if you do use plastic containers, just try to avoid heating them up as little as possible. And then you can even use something like mason jars. Mason jars are kind of nice just because you can, for example, like if you want to meal prep your salads or something like that, you can put, all of your salad ingredients, just shake the jar, and then you have your salad for the day. Similar with overnight oats. You can just put all your oatmeal ingredients into a mason jar, shake it up, and then you have your breakfast in the morning. I would kind of avoid using them to heat up your food. Again, kind of similar, because it's a little wonkier piece of glass, and of course the lids aren't microwavable because they're metal, but again, similar with the BPA plastic, just put it out on a plate and you're good to go. Few other things to keep in mind when planning out your meal prep is to come up with recipes that you want to try during the following week, and then basing your grocery list off of those recipes. So maybe Thursday or Friday, let's say, you really want like a burrito bowl or something like that. Then coming up with, recipes that are, nice and easy to follow, and then kind of doing an inventory at home. What do you have? And then basing your grocery list off of that. So maybe you need chicken and beans or something like that. Making sure that you base your grocery list off of your recipes so that, you're ready to go once you come to, your cooking day. So what exactly should you look for in recipes? One kind of easy is that they're easy to prepare. If you choose something like, like an eggs Benedict or something that's very involved, it kind of defeats the purpose a little bit. Finding recipes that you wouldn't mind eating leftovers for, because let's face it, when you meal prep, the goal isn't to eat it, right after you're done cooking it. You're gonna store it in the fridge or the freezer. And so, it is going to taste like leftovers. So, if it's something that you don't necessarily mind eating, then, it might be a good fit for you to meal prep. You also want to look for ingredients that refrigerate or freeze well. So a lot of good, and we'll get to like common food choices that are in meal prepping, but things like, vegetables that have a high water content. So for example, like zucchini or, different kinds of lettuces, they don't necessarily freeze well. So if your plan is to freeze your meals, you want to be mindful of that, because you will get like a lot of freezer burn and they won't, hold up well in the freezer. And then you also want to choose recipes with different cooking methods. So for example, let's say you're going to saute different vegetables and then you're going to roast chicken. As opposed to, well, I need to roast my chicken, I need to roast my vegetables. By doing two different cooking methods at the same time, you're able to kind of save time that way, because, you're using different parts of the stove, but at the same time, you're still able to cook everything. And then similarly, picking recipes with similar ingredients. So let's say, two dishes that you decide to make on, your cooking day, they both, they all require onions. So it's kind of nice, because then you can just prepare a lot of onions right away and then you're good to go, as opposed to preparing, you're trying to minimize the amount of ingredients that you're trying to prepare, essentially. And so then different common foods for meal prepping. So good choices are frozen vegetables. Different starches hold up well. So for example, like regular and sweet potatoes, parsnips, rutabagas, whole grains. So oats, quinoa, brown rice. You can use white rice, of course, but brown rice does have a little bit more fiber. Pulses, which is just a fancy term for, beans, lentils, split peas, things like that. And then your lean protein also, are also good choices for meal prepping. So different kinds of seafood like fish or maybe shrimp, eggs, dairy products like cottage cheese and yogurt, poultry, skinless, of course, preferably, and then pork and beef. And then just a few things to keep in mind. The first thing, of course, is to always practice self-compassion. Just because you're not meal prepping, for the entire week right away, it doesn't necessarily mean, you're doing anything wrong. Even if it's one meal a week, that's progress towards your goal. So it's nothing to be, it's nothing to feel bad about. And then also pick a style that's right for you. So if you don't like cooking big batches of food, you don't have to do that. Maybe you'll get more benefit meal prepping, a bunch of different ingredients, or maybe meal prepping for a shorter amount of time. It's all up to you. And then be careful not to cook too much. This kind of ties into what I just said a little bit. If you cook too much, food doesn't last so long, as long. You can eat the same thing for a week, but it tends to get old. It doesn't necessarily store all that well, unless you freeze it, of course. So, unless you're able to freeze everything or you don't mind eating the same thing, just start with, maybe 1 or 2 meals, over the course of a couple of days, just so that you're not cooking, just so that you're not stuck with a big batch of food. And then start with recipes that you know. So, even again, if it's just something as simple as, beans and rice or something like that, start with recipes because then, once you get used to meal prepping those, then you can start to going into the next point where you're adding new recipes and new ingredients into your meal prepping plan. And it's a good idea, again, to kind of do this at a slow pace. That way, you're not going too fast, you're not going too quickly, and then, you're quickly becoming overwhelmed. So it's a good way to, kind of ease into, that meal prepping mindset. And so that is all that I have for you today. As always, let us know if you have any questions by commenting below, or you can email us at healthpromotion@glick.net. And so I will see you again on Thursday, where we will be preparing fennel for our harvest of the week. So if you have any interest in fennel, if you want to just see what it's all about, I invite you to join us at 11 on Thursday for more information on that. So thanks, and I will see you again soon.